Hey, I know this isn't my usual Warframes where they are now, but this is actually something I hope to have be a mainstay on the channel. I've been tossing ideas around with how I wanted to tackle weapons, but while I originally didn't want to have individual videos on each one, I think that may be the best approach. Note this will not be replacing Warframes where they are now. I actually have a couple randomizer wheels to determine which category we'll be doing next week at the end of each of these videos. Alright, onwards and sideways. Welcome to Armory Analysis. This is the obligatory "this is just my opinion" segment, so if you've seen this before, feel free to skip to this timestamp. These videos are to eventually cover everything in the Warframe arsenal, and as you can imagine, I don't have a steel path build with every weapon in the game, though by the end of this I probably will. I don't follow the meta of Warframe as I find some of the wackier weapons to be the most fun. Hell, my favorite secondary is actually the Occucore. I may not have the best build sometimes with weapons, but they work well enough, and are usually my best attempt at making them good. Last thing of note, we will be talking about Rivens, however they will not be the deciding factor as to whether they're good or not, as they are not that easy to obtain. That and I don't feel comfortable rating something that I don't have. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. This week's video is about the Ogris. We're going to be talking mostly about the Kuva Ogris, but we will talk about both of them. So, as for the regular Ogris, has a charge-up time, has 5 in the magazine, extremely low crit chance, standard crit multiplier though, and only blast damage. And for a rocket launcher, it's fairly weak. Granted, given the time period, I totally understand why that is. Alright, so let's get a little bit more in depth with the Kuva variant. That is the primary focus of the video, of course. It only has a 7 ammo maximum, which is tiny, but with it being an AoE weapon, that unfortunately makes a lot of sense. Pretty decent fire rate at 1.5 for a rocket launcher, has a magazine capacity of 3, and pretty short reload speed, all things considered. Riven disposition's only 2, which before the incarnate adapters I would say is fine given what it is, but nowadays, that sucks. That really sucks. 47% status chance though, which is actually pretty damn good. Nice and tasty. Impact puncture damage, right off the rip. Absolutely pretty much no crit chance. It only has like 9% crit chance, but that's low enough to where it's not even really worth putting mods into unless, well, actually even with a Riven in this case. It also has another element, that being the element that you choose when you get your Kuva Lich. Has a lower damage than the regular variants for the, the actual on-hit damage, but the radial actually has a much higher damage. And the radial also has inherent blast and slash. I didn't realize the slash until fairly recently. The Kuva Ogris and the regular Ogris both have access to a unique mod called Nightwatch Napalm. This creates an area of effect of fire that perpetually does damage to the enemies that are within it for the duration that it sits there. I have this on all of my builds because it actually is quite nice, and it does help with galvanized aptitude, as it does keep applying heat. So, in preparation for this video, I did end up boiling down my builds down to 1, technically 2, but that one's defunct as well for now. And the only real difference is I don't have heavy caliber on the other one for the sake of having precision. I'm still not entirely sure what I'm doing with that one, to be fair. But on this one, I decided to go with stat builds to get galvanized aptitude going. 30,000 damage per shot on the radial. I'm sure there's better out there, but this is about as good as I could get it with the way I think, anyway. And it does pretty well, as I'll show here. all things considered, I'd say I did pretty well with the Kuva Ogris, considering these are level 175 heavy gunners. They're not steel path or anything, just to clarify. They're just level 175. But either way, sadly this thing doesn't do that well in comparison to a lot of other weapons now, especially considering the Carnon adapters are a thing, and most of those weapons still have really high Riven disposition. Granted, even without it, they still do really freaking well. I mean, to be fair, like I said in the intro, we're not going to be using Rivens to determine whether it's good or not. However, that is a thing of note. Considering this is the first episode, I feel the need I should bring that up. I would kill a great many Grineer for a Riven for this thing, if nothing else because I find it to be an absolute blast to use, mind the pun. Because it feels like you're using the, rocket launcher from Halo, mainly because of the audio design. Like, it has that meatiness to it. I have no other way of really explaining that, and I probably sound a little crazy, but whatever. I like it. I do pass up on it more often than not, especially when Steel Path is involved, because while, yes, it does kill Steel Path, it takes, 2 or 3 rockets to do it because of how Galvanized Aptitude works. However, if you're not doing Steel Path, this thing is an absolute, bomb to use. Alright, let's see what I'm doing next week. Okay, I guess I'll see you next week for Titania. Thank you all for watching, and have yourselves a good one.